You're listening to Binjang on 91.5, and it's Tony Graham here, and it's time for Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Good afternoon, Matthew.
Good afternoon, Tony. Great to be chatting to you again.
Yeah. Well, there's been great developments in the EV space. That's electronic vehicles, and just this week there's so much happening. Now, the Chinese EV startup NIO, and I think that's the way they pronounce it, that was on the brink of collapse in 2019, but it's now unveiled a new electric sedan, and I think it's courtesy of China's push by getting behind these companies and giving them the resources to make it very successful very quickly. Now, already they've put out a motor vehicle that can do in excess of 1,000 kilometres on a charge. That's extraordinary.
It is extraordinary, and they made the announcement about that vehicle. That one's not actually available at this stage, but they made the announcement about 1,000 kilometre range vehicle with a solid state battery. So again, this whole space is developing so quickly, Tony. But you are right. NIO was on the brink of collapse in 2019. Now they've got a small advantage that most other companies don't have. They went along to the Chinese government and said, "We'd like a little bit of help, please." So they kicked in some money, and it was only $1 billion, so it wasn't too much for the Chinese government to throw in, but that basically bailed them out, and now they're going from strength to strength. They've had a few SUV models because they saw that as the most popular space, and that is very popular around the world. So they've had a few SUV models they've been producing and selling already in China, and they've been going well. These two new sedans that they've announced at the moment are a 500-kilometre range and a 700-kilometre range, using current battery technology, and they're really aimed at the premium markets. They're really aimed at that sort of Tesla market, but at a much cheaper price than the Teslas. So that will really make some quick inroads into the Chinese community, but I expect to see them to make some inroads across the world as well, Tony. But then that, as you said, that 1,000-kilometre range sedan, if someone's got range anxiety, you go and throw 1,000 kilometres of range into your vehicle, that starts to solve most people's range anxiety problems. Even people that drive long distances don't often knock off 1,000 kilometres in one go. You're not like to have some breaks along a trip like that. But this is pretty exciting overall for the world. This might be China really pushing into the EV space, but it sends a clear signal to manufacturers around the world that the EV space is there, it's ready. 2021, I believe, is going to be the year of the EV. So this is just one manufacturer, but manufacturers around the world will really start to jump on this.
Yeah, and that market's there for the taking, and the Chinese, they're planning on taking more than 50% of car manufacturing in the world using this kind of technology. And the interesting thing is that, of course, we've got the Tesla factory over there in Shanghai. It's going gangbusters. As a matter of fact, they're selling quite a few NIOs, but the Tesla actually is outselling the NIO at this point in time. Now, Tesla's been around for a lot longer than NIO, I might add. So it's quite astounding, the sales they're getting. And that's, I think, a portent for the future.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is, Tony, you're right. I think China is really focused on getting into that EV space, but the opportunity is only there because some other manufacturers, some traditional manufacturers, have maybe been asleep at the wheel, if you excuse the very bad pun there, Tony, because those manufacturers have been almost turning the other way with the EV space and hoping it'll go away, or hoping there'll be some other solution, or hoping that people reject EVs. And they're not doing that. They're increasing across the world. Its sales are increasing. And finally, some of those more traditional manufacturers are working out they've got to get into the EV space. But meanwhile, while they've been dozing, other companies like NIO have been starting up, and there's a few startups. You wouldn't think it'd be easy to get into the car market just to manufacture a car. It's not an easy process. But because there's so much opportunity there, I think companies are deciding to get into this space.
Yep, it's going to be jump in or get left behind before long, I can tell you that.
Yeah, I agree.
So, do you like the idea of a car dash cam, but don't like the clunky unit mounted on the windscreen like me?
Well, I do love car dash cams. All my kids' cars, I've made sure we've had dash cams and all of those. I think it's a really good safety device. And it doesn't mean that you're trying to check up on what someone's doing, but if you're involved in an accident, it's a great way to see what happened to that accident. It can even be something simple where someone comes along and bumps into your car in a car park and then doesn't leave a note and drives off. which I'm amazed that people do that, but obviously that does happen. So they can be used for all sorts of useful things. But as you say, most people don't like the idea of cluttering up their windscreen with yet another device, restricting their vision. So there's a company that's come out with the idea of using your rear view mirror, your normal rear view mirror, replacing that with a device that gives you a rear view mirror, but built into that is a dash cam. So it's got the camera at the front of the actual rear view mirror, and on the other side of it, you can actually see what the dash cam can see, but you can also change to just mirror mode, so just as a normal mirror. It's still recording footage, of course, so you don't always have to see what's on there, because you don't need to see what's on the dash cam, Tony, because you can see out the front windscreen, so you know what's going on there.
Yeah.
But it's nice to have that bit of footage there if you want to be able to see it. So a combination unit, I think, is a great idea. And you have got cars that are out now that have got a combination of cameras built into them, so they're recording footage as you go. And you mentioned Tesla a moment ago. That's one that does have an inbuilt dash cam because they've got the cameras around for the autonomous driving. So you'll see more and more of these sort of things coming out. This is a third-party accessory at the moment, or an aftermarket accessory, but I can see more and more manufacturers choosing to install a dash cam integrated into some part of the car that may well be integrated into the rearview mirror as well.
Yeah. Now, Matthew, if you want a deep hospital-grade clean without the price tag, and particularly in the COVID times where there's always that issue of, have they missed something? Because you can't see something like COVID, and it's not always that easy to get it right. So turning to a robot mightn't be a bad idea, might it?
A robot is a solution to so many problems that we have, Tony. And obviously cleaning a classroom, for example, where you've got lots of kids going through every day, all those kids go back to their homes, they're dealing with their parents that have been out to their jobs. So a classroom, a school, has the potential to be a super spreader. So cleaning classrooms every night, doing a deep clean, I'm not actually sure what a deep clean means, but that's an expression I've heard thrown around a lot. Doing a deep clean of a classroom every night is really important. But it starts to become pretty tiresome. You start to pay cleaners a fair bit of money, and really making sure you get everything clean is pretty difficult to do. So Adibot has come up with 2 robots, and they both use UV light to actually do the cleaning for you. And effectively, you park the device in the middle of a classroom and make sure you get out of the classroom because you don't want to be exposed to all that UV light, and away it'll go. It'll clean the classroom using UV light for you. There's 2 models available. One's a stationary product where you basically park it in the classroom and then remotely activate it. And the other one is an autonomous robot where you map out the school, and then after hours it will go into each classroom and automatically clean each classroom for you. Now, it is more affordable because you're not paying for it on an ongoing basis, but the units themselves aren't the cheapest. US $20,000 for the stationary device and US $40,000 for the complete autonomous robot. So they're not that cheap. But then again, if we have to go for the next 3 months, 6 months, maybe the next year, maybe longer than that, cleaning classrooms every night, the cleaning bill for that starts to add up. So maybe $20,000 isn't that expensive for a robot like this to do the cleaning for you.
Well, I like the idea, and it's very practical, I guess, providing that it's going to work very well, which it should do. I guess it's a bit like mowing the lawn, having a robot to do that. What a great idea, I reckon.
Yeah, you're right. And this is the sort of thing. There are new devices coming up or that are being created because of the situation the world finds itself in. If I would have said to you a year ago, there'd be a robot that you'd pay $40,000 for to clean a classroom, you would have laughed at me and said, well, who's ever going to buy that? Fast forward a year, and here we are, and this is a valid device that people are now buying across the world because this is a problem that we need solving.
Yeah, that's dead right. Yeah. And you've been listening to Matthew Dickerson on Binjang 91.5 with Tech Talk. So stick around next week in the morning and in the afternoon, and we'll have another great session. In the meantime, it's back to all the great information and music on Binjang.